September 14th, 1987, New York City. A quiet Sunday morning. You're expecting the gentle, romantic rustle of a paper hitting your doorstep. You know, the classic movie vibe. A slow morning, a hot cup of coffee. Instead, you hear a sound like a tactical missile strike. A heavy, bone-shaking thump that sets off car alarms down the street. Calm down, it wasn't a break-in. It was just the Sunday edition of the New York Times, which weighed 12 pounds, over 5.5 kilograms, 1,612 pages. To give you some perspective, that is heavier than a professional bowling ball. It's heavier than a seriously fat Thanksgiving turkey. This wasn't journalism. It was a brutal CrossFit workout delivered straight to your door. Honestly, if you tried to read the whole thing, you'd probably get a herniated disc before even reaching the real estate section. But the real question isn't how they printed it. In a world of high-speed industrial presses, the mechanics are just boring. The real question is, why? Why did an industry dedicated to the pure truth become so utterly obsessed with physical mass? Who decided that more bulk automatically meant better? Buckle up. Today, we're weighing the truth. Spoiler alert, it's heavy as hell. We live in the age of the infinite scroll. We sit here looking all smart and efficient because the entire history of the world fits into our back pocket. But back in the 19th century, the tech bros of the printing world had a completely different philosophy. They didn't want the news in your pocket. They wanted the news to occupy your entire living room, literally. Imagine it's Tuesday morning, 1840. You bought the daily paper. You can't just open it on the bus or while sipping tea. No, it's a whole home engineering ritual. You have to completely clear the dining table, move the candles, blow out the oil lamp so you don't accidentally burn the house down, and then yell for your wife or kid to hold down the corners. Because a slight breeze from the window and your morning long read turns into a giant, ink-stained kite. People officially called them blanket sheets, and it wasn't a metaphor. You could literally tuck in a small pony with that paper on a cold night, and it would be perfectly fine. Why this gigantism? You're probably thinking, oh, maybe so much important stuff was happening in the 19th century that they just ran out of space. Yeah, right. Dream on. It was a classic legal tax hustle. Government robbery, basically. Between 1712 and 1855, the British government introduced what the public lovingly called the tax on knowledge. The Stamp Act required every single sheet of a newspaper to be stamped and taxed. And the state didn't just do it for the money. They were terrified. A smart working class is a dangerous working class. Make the papers expensive, and the peasants stay clueless. But the government forgot one thing. British publishers were the original capitalist anarchists. They looked at the law and found a beautiful loophole. The tax was charged per sheet, not per square inch. So, publishers did the only logical, yet completely insane thing. They said, "Oh, really? Fine. We'll print everything on one single sheet. But that sheet is going to be as massive as your sins." And the pages started growing and bloating. By the 1830s, papers like Daily News and The Standard became so ridiculously huge that reading them required the wingspan of an albatross and the patience of a Tibetan monk. To read a story in the bottom right corner, you literally had to get on your knees and crawl on the floor. And here's where the weird psychological twist happens. Because the paper looked like a monument, people started thinking, well, if this guy can afford such a gigantic piece of paper, he must be telling the truth. It was the birth of the physical lie, the illusion that sheer volume automatically equals authority. Let's travel to Vicksburg, Mississippi, July 1863. The city is under a brutal Union siege. Food is gone, ammunition is gone, and more importantly, newsprint paper is completely gone. Now, a normal person would say, Okay, let's stop printing the newspaper and focus on not dying. But J.M. Swords, the editor of the Daily Citizen, was built different. He refused to shut down. So what did he do? He walked into a local store, ripped down rolls of decorative floral wallpaper, flipped them over, and printed the news on the blank side. Imagine reading about bloody casualties and impending starvation, and when you turn the page, there's a lovely pattern of Victorian roses and lilies. Talk about a mixed vibe. When Union soldiers finally captured the city, they found the type still set in the press. Being top-tier trolls, they added their own little note at the bottom, printed a final wallpaper edition, and sent it out. Today, collectors fight to the death for a piece of that wallpaper. Why? Because the physical material became the story. But while Vicksburg was dealing with a paper shortage, the rest of the world was facing a massive paper hunger. The Industrial Revolution was booming, and everyone wanted to read. But there was a tiny, disgusting bottleneck. Paper was still made from old linen and cotton rags, and humanity was running out of rags. This led to some dark, borderline horror movie solutions. Enter Augustus Stanwood, a paper mill owner from Maine. He looked at the global rag shortage, looked at history, and had a light bulb moment. Hey, you know who has a lot of old linen rags? Egypt. You know who's wrapped in miles of ancient linen? Mummies. Yes, this actually happened. During the 1850s and 60s, Stanwood allegedly imported shipfuls of Egyptian mummies, stripped them of their ancient wrappings, and threw that linen straight into the paper pulp machines. Think about that next time you read a vintage article. You're not just absorbing information, you might literally be staring at the processed remnants of a 3,000-year-old Egyptian priest. The news didn't just have weight, it had a literal body count. It was ghosts in the machine, quite literally. All of this madness culminated in 1859 with a masterpiece of pure media arrogance, the Constellation. Printed in New York by a guy named George Roberts, this wasn't just a newspaper. This was an architectural threat. It had only 8 pages. Sounds reasonable, right? Except each page was 50 inches wide and 70 inches high. That's over 4 feet by nearly 6 feet for one single page. To read the Constellation, you didn't sit in an armchair. You needed a ladder, a team of 3 people, and probably a permit from the city council. It was so absurdly large that it became a meme before memes existed. People bought it just to stand next to it and take photos. But if you actually managed to open it, you realized something hilarious. The text was microscopic. It was filled with random poems, stolen European gossip, and endless columns of sketchy ads for patent medicines that promised to cure everything from baldness to death. Roberts didn't print the Constellation because he had important things to say. He printed it because he wanted people to look at the sheer size and go, "Wow, this is important." He used physical scale to completely paralyze the reader's critical thinking. It was the 19th century equivalent of an all-caps clickbait headline, just 6 feet tall and smelling like old ink. Thankfully, human biology eventually rebelled. People's arms got tired, and the media landscape had to shrink or die. The hero of this counter-revolution was a guy named Alfred Harmsworth, who later became Lord Northcliffe. In 1896, he launched the Daily Mail in London. His pitch was revolutionary. We give you the same amount of news, but we cut out the useless rambling. And hey, look, it actually fits your hands. This was the birth of the tabloid format. It wasn't just a change in size, It was a shift in psychology. News became fast, aggressive, and portable. It was designed for the commuter, the worker, the person on the move. Suddenly, the blanket sheets looked like dinosaurs. The industry realized that convenience sells better than monumentality. By the way, just for context on how far this went, while some guys were building 6-foot monsters, others went to the absolute opposite extreme. The smallest newspaper in the world was printed in Portugal, making it into the Guinness Book of Records. Its size? Just 8.27 millimeters by 25.35 millimeters. That's less than a third of an inch. You literally needed a microscope to see if the weather forecast was sunny. Talk about going from one absurdity to another. Today, our news doesn't weigh 12 pounds. It weighs exactly as much as your smartphone. A few grams of plastic, glass, and rare earth minerals. We happily traded the clunky blanket sheets for the infinite scroll. But don't get too smug. The architecture of the lie didn't disappear. It just became invisible. Instead of physical mass, we now have engagement metrics. Instead of 1,600 physical pages, we have a digital feed that literally never ends. We are still trying to measure the importance of information by its sheer volume. We still unconsciously believe that if a topic is everywhere on the internet, filling up every corner of our screens, it must be the truth. George Roberts and his mattress-sized newspaper taught us a lesson that we still haven't quite learned. The media will always try to occupy 100% of your space. Back then, they wanted your dining table and your living room floor. Today, they want every single spare second of your attention. They still use the scale of the delivery to distract you from the substance of the message. Thanks for weighing the truth with me today. Drop a like, hit subscribe, and remember, the real weight of knowledge isn't how much you consume. It's your ability to filter it out. See you in the next one.